And if we are vegan most of the time, we can even allow ourselves the quote luxury end quote of eating conventionally produced flesh and animal products when we go to quote fancy restaurants end quote. Does this excuse apply only to people who have enough money to eat in quote fancy end quote places? Are occasional hamburgers always wrong because McDonald's is not quote fancy end quote enough? Or are McDonald's hamburgers always okay because McDonald's has, with Singer's praise, adopted Temple Grandin's slaughter and handling guidelines? It boggles the mind. Moreover, if, as Singer maintains, his concern is the suffering and not the killing of animals, then his own behavior is inconsistent. Singer claims to be a vegan when he shops for himself, quote, "But when I'm traveling or going to other people's places, I will be quite happy to eat vegetarian rather than vegan," end quote. So when he's traveling or eating at another's home, he will eat animal products, but will not consume flesh. I assume that this is what he means when he refers to being a, quote, vegetarian, end quote, in brackets. But why would Singer distinguish between flesh and animal products? Although flesh involves killing the animal, Singer does not think that killing an animal is morally significant, or at least not significant enough to make veganism a moral imperative. If it is suffering that matters, dairy products and eggs certainly involve as much suffering as flesh products do, and dairy animals and laying hens end up in the same slaughterhouses as meat animals anyway, after they are, quote, spent, end quote. Indeed, as I've said many times, there is probably more suffering in a glass of milk than in a pound of steak. So it would seem that if suffering is Singer's concern, he would not be, quote, flexible, end quote, about non-flesh foods. If Singer's views are merely the musings of a confused academic and without consequence in the real world, we might be tempted to ignore his elitist notions about what counts as morally significant self-awareness for the purpose of justifying the, quote, luxury, end quote, of eating meat and animal products. But unfortunately, Singer's views, as absurd and speciesist as they are the foundation of the ubiquitous, quote, happy meat, end quote, movement that is seeking to work with institutional animal exploiters to make animal exploitation more, quote, humane, end quote, so that we can increase the opportunities for people to be, quote, conscientious omnivores, end quote. Singer's views are being implemented by a number of welfarist organizations, from PETA, which gives awards to Grandin and to, quote, happy meat, end quote, hucksters such as Whole Foods, to the Humane Society of the United States, which promotes welfare reforms that will increase the productivity and profits for animal exploiters and sponsors the Certified Humane Raised and Handled label to assure consumers that they are acting in a morally superior way by buying only certain animal corpses and body products, to Vegan Outreach, which maintains that veganism, quote, is not an end in itself, it is not a dogma or religion, nor a list of forbidden ingredients or immutable laws. It is only a tool for opposing cruelty and reducing suffering, end quote. Singer and these welfarist organizations that have adopted his approach have become partners with the institutional exploiters and serve as a marketing arm for the meat, dairy, and egg industries. The welfare reforms that they support do little, if anything, to help animals, and these reforms, when coupled with the praise and support of Singer and the, quote, happy meat, end quote, brigade, most certainly make people feel more comfortable about continuing to eat animal products, or to return to eat animal products that they once avoided. To see the problem with Singer's approach, in brackets, if it is not already crystal clear to you, end brackets, slot your principles about racism, sexism, or homophobia into Singer's framework. How does it sound if you try to justify, quote, falling off the wagon, end quote, on occasion with respect to these forms of discrimination? It is okay to engage in the, quote, luxury, end quote, of a bit of sexism on Saturday night. Is it okay to indulge in the, quote, luxury, end quote, of attending a Klan rally? Is there, quote, room for indulgent, end quote, if we limit our homophobic slurs to 1 day a week? Here's another quote from Singer's Mother Jones interview. I do want to emphasize that I don't think eating ethically, particularly from a utilitarian point of view, is a matter of saying, here's this strict law that I have to do everything possible to comply with. I think we can be ethically conscientious and recognize that sometimes there are going to be compromises. Sometimes it's going to be difficult, very inconvenient, to get the best choice, so we'll settle for something else. Substitute in your views about rape. Would it be acceptable to say we do not have to comply strictly with the prohibition against rape? After all, there may be times when it will be, quote, very difficult, very inconvenient, end quote, not to engage in rape. Animal exploitation is so deeply embedded in our society, culture, and history that we are not used to viewing it on the same level as other forms of discrimination. If anything is ever to change, we are going to have to think our way out of this mess and be clear we cannot justify the use of animals, however, quote, humane, end quote, our treatment may be. As long as we are not recoiling from characterizing animal corpses and animal products as a, quote, luxury, end quote, or accepting that we do not have to be vegan when we find it, quote, very difficult, very inconvenient, end quote, we have not even started the process. In closing, I want to share a story with you about something that happened to me last weekend. We had a warm Saturday and I went over to Whole Foods to buy some organic vegetables. I was wearing a denim shirt over my fantastic new Vegan Freak t-shirt that Bob and Jenna Torres had just sent me. I was standing in line behind a woman who had a cart full of food, including a fair amount of meat and cheese. She saw my shirt and asked me what Vegan Freak meant. I explained that it was a website and podcast devoted to vegan education. She asked me if I was vegan. I replied that I was and had been for 25 years. She said that she was a vegetarian a few years back, but her husband and kids like meat, so she had gone back to eating meat, but she added, quote, I only buy meat here. I am a member of PETA, and they gave this store an award for how well they treat animals, end quote. She asked me if I had seen the signs backed by the meat case and egg case that said Whole Foods only bought from producers who raise their animals, quote, humanely, end quote. I replied that I had. Whole Foods does indeed have such signs, large ones actually. I told her I did not think that the lives of whole food animals were really any different from the lives of other animals, and that they're all still killed in the end anyway. Her reply, quote, yes, but I hope they suffer less, end quote. And this is where Peter Singer has brought us. Veganism is not necessary. The, quote, father of the animal rights movement, end quote, is not even a vegan and regards being a consistent vegan as, quote, fanatical, end quote. So why does anyone else need to be a vegan? We can enjoy the, quote, luxury, end quote, of eating meat and animal products from animals who have been tortured less than others, and if we are vegans most of the time, we should feel okay to treat ourselves even to conventionally tortured animals when we splurge at a, quote, fancy restaurant, end quote. We can allow ourselves to indulge in the, quote, luxury, end quote, that is made possible only by death. Thanks for listening. Come visit us on LiveVegan, that's facebook.com/LiveVegan, for all things abolitionist vegan. You can find many wonderful blogs, podcasts, and vids by abolitionist vegans. And remember, go vegan. It's easy, it's better for you and for the planet, and most importantly, it's the morally right thing to do. Till next time.